Hi, welcome to this edition of the Ratliff Mandolins weekly production diary series. And in this episode we're going to start with mandolin number 8. Mandolin number 8 is a country boy F-style with tortoiseshell binding. Now I already have the top bound and it's ready for the excess glue and all that whatnot to be trimmed off of. So we're going to run some footage of me cleaning up mandolin number 8. The first thing to do is remove the string holding the last piece of binding in place, and then I grab a drill with a 5-inch sanding attachment. This sanding attachment is made of a piece of rubber, and the sandpaper has adhesive backing to it so it just sticks to the rubber. The main goal here is to remove any excess glue squeeze out, and the secondary goal is to start smoothing out the worst of the humps. Once the top is relatively hump free, it's time to address the scroll area. I start with gouges and I follow with cabinet scrapers and then heavy sandpaper, and the scroll is slowly brought closer to its final shape. And once I'm pretty close to the shape of the scroll, I take those same cabinet scrapers and go to work on the top. I'm specifically looking for any remaining humps and flat spots or wavy areas that need fixing. I have several differently shaped cabinet scrapers. Some of them are stock store-bought shapes, and some of them I've reshaped on a grinding wheel. I'm not very good at sharpening them, but I guess over the years I've learned how to get them sharp enough to do the job. Overall, what I'm trying to do here is to get the top down to its final shape and sanded to 100 grit. So the scrapers get the worst of the worst as far as humps and things like that go, and then I work down through the different grits of sandpaper, refining and smoothing as I go. And to help with that refining and smoothing, I use backers for the sandpaper. By that I mean that backers are shaped pieces of wood or rubber that the sandpaper is wrapped around, giving that sandpaper a certain rigid or semi-rigid shape. I have some backers that are made from 1/4-inch rubber that have just the perfect amount of flexibility, and I've found that these are most excellent for sanding out tops and backs. Anyway, after the mandolin's sanded down to 100 grit, it's ready to move on to the next phase, which is putting in the neck. Is that a toaster, you ask? And the answer is yes. In fact, for the last several years, instead of hot sand or boiling water or open flame, I have been using a toaster to heat my binding up and mold it to shape. And it works very well. So that's what we've been using. What we are doing right here is gluing the next to the last piece of binding on mandolin number 5. And as I mentioned in an earlier video, I wrap the binding on with masonry string. There's 2 or 3 different sizes or weights of masonry string, and I like the heavier kind a little better than the thinner stuff, because when you're trying to pull pretty tight, that thinner stuff will cut your hand. So I like the heavier stuff. So there we go. That is the next to the last piece on number 5. And then after that we'll get this last piece wrapped, and then we'll be ready for the cleanup process and installation of the neck. There's been quite a bit of progress made on the batch here this week. I shot a lot of video. I'd set up the job and set up a camera and just turn the camera on and go to work. So I'm going to share a few of those clips with you right now with captions explaining exactly what's going on. So I have all of the mandolins and their parts that I have laid out here. I have them laid out in order, and let's have a status report on them all. Except for number 11, which is still in the binding jigs, all of the tops have been bound. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 have had the neck installed and the backs are on, so they're awaiting the fretboard extenders and the fretboards. Number 4 here, which is going to a fellow in Florida, it's the one with black binding. It is awaiting a neck, which you saw the blanks being sawed out in the previous clip. Number 5, I have all of the parts. The top is bound, the back is cut and more or less ready to be put on, and the neck is ready to be put on. Number 6, which is going to a man in Louisiana, it's much like number 4. It's ready to go. It's ready for its neck, which has not been built yet, as is number 7, which is going to Pennsylvania. Number 8, I do have the neck. You saw it being cleaned up, I think, earlier. It's the tortoiseshell binding, beautiful curly maple back, and the neck is ready to go, so it needs just to be assembled as well. Number 9, this is going to a fellow in Ohio. It's an F style with cream colored binding. Needs an A style neck to go in it, so it's like the same as number 4, 6, and 7 here. We just need to build the necks for that one. Number 10, I guess it is going to a fellow here in Tennessee. It has got the only A style neck that I have completed and ready to put in. Is laid aside for this mandolin. That's a beautiful curly maple wood as well. And of course, number 11, which is another one just like number 5, made out of bird's eye maple. It's an R5 master model, and I have all the pieces and parts for it. Just need to finish binding on the top. Now, number 5 and number 9 and number 11 are all going to be bound on the back as well. So they're top priority for the assembling, putting the neck and the back on, so that we can get that job started over on the binding jigs. And that's where we're at pretty much. Speaking of the binding jigs, in next week's video, I've got a couple of requests that I'm going to try to honor. And one of them is to show a little more detail on the binding fixtures or the binding jigs, the actual pieces, the stations where the mandolins fit into, and they have all of where we're wrapping the string. Somebody wanted a little more detail about that, so I'm going to try to show a little bit of that in next week's video. And also I had a request to show the process of installing a neck, and which we'll try to do that as well, because hopefully by the end of next week we're going to have a whole bunch of these with their necks and backs on as well. So that's where we're at. I want to thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. Click the like and subscribe button, and we'll look for you in a future video.